This is how to break down any prompt using a tool called VST. It works for any subject. In teaching both English and history, I've noticed that students will sometimes produce a great written response, but where it falls is it does not actually answer the question that's being presented. I know I've also heard countless number of teachers also express this similar sentiment. So I developed VST to help students make sure that they are breaking down the question effectively and then answering it effectively. So the purpose of VST is to, number one, break down the prompt. Number two, use it as a way to guide your outline, especially since you have the broken down prompt right there. And last but not least, consistently going back and checking your writing to make sure that you answer it. Now, how much time should you actually spend VSTing? You should spend about 5 minutes because remember, this VST, this outline will not be graded, but it's the writing that gets graded. This is to get your ideas out, to get them sorted and organized before diving into the actual writing. Plus, when you go to actually write, you want to focus on how you articulate. And so by having the content and everything already planned out, your brain is having to do less multitasking and is able to focus on just the writing. So, the first step of VST, how to break down the prompt. So, the V stands for verb. What is the prompt asking you to do? The S stands for skill. What does this verb even mean? There's a big difference between analyze and evaluate and so on and so forth. Last but not least is the T, which is not the gossip, but the topic. What are the key words in the prompt to make sure that you're sticking with what the prompt is actually asking for? What content, what dates, etc. So for example, since I teach IB history, I'm going to be using an IB history prompt. To what extent was U.S. foreign policy toward Latin America in the period of 1890 to 1914, principally guided by economic motives? Support your views with specific examples. That's a mouthful. So what you do is you take it to the VST. Our verb in this case, although an odd verb, is going to be to what extent. I would then ask myself, what does that even mean? How can I define to what extent? What is the skill? I'm ultimately asking myself, how much do I agree with the statement that's been presented? Last but not least is going to be the T, the important words. Some of the important words I'm going to pull out and add here is U.S. foreign policy. I'm not going to write these all just for the sake of time, but I would also think it's important to have Latin America, the date range, because if you go before or after that, it's simply not relevant. And then this is going to be important as well, because that is exactly the statement you're asking yourself to what extent you agree with. So that was step one, breaking down the prompt. Step two is then how to outline. You need to look back at your VST and ask yourself, how can I outline and brainstorm an effective essay for to what extent? Since I'm asking myself, how much do I agree? I teach my students that you're ultimately asking yourself, do you agree to a great extent or do you agree to a small extent? Then what I would do is, in looking at the T and the words that are important, I would start thinking of all the different examples. And I'm just going to start jotting them down like a brain dump. And I'm going to start seeing all these ideas build. And that's going to help me see visually which is going to be the argument that I make, great or small. Step three is the actual writing portion. And so what you want to do is make sure that as you're writing, you're consistently looking back at your outline. You are also consistently looking back at your VST. Am I actually answering what the verb's asking? Am I actually using content that the T is asking for? So this is going to be a very effective way to make sure you stay on topic and you stay relevant to what is being asked of you. This is How to VST. If you have any questions, please comment below.